Well, following on the presentations, we go on to the Q&A session.
Sommes à l'écoute de ceux qui souhaiteraient poser des questions.
Would anyone like to ask any questions?
Oui, madame, c'est...
Yes, please give your identity. Nadine Dominicus from Guinea-Bissau. Just a question. You mentioned microfinance in order to finance things which are rather heavy. Is microfinance more expensive than other kinds of financing? For example, an agricultural bank, will that bank charge you a lower interest rate than a microfinance institution?
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Amadou, first counselor in the Embassy of Senegal. I'd like to thank the presenters for their clear outlines and for the practical examples they gave us. I am particularly interested in Mr. Pesche's presentation, who gave practical examples in the Senegal River Delta region. Questions were asked as regards to the agribusiness approach in Senegal. Yes, we need major industrial projects, mechanization from the big companies, the sugar company, for example, to develop a certain amount of production. But there are high production costs involved. But yet, the government is counting more and more on small producers and family holdings. So that is why the government launched the project of agricultural farms. In Wolof, it's called Natange, which means development. So it takes account of the new approach in contrast to major industrial projects. So agricultural farms are being developed with the help of the trust fund for migration. So that's what I want to say relating to what Mr. Pesche said. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur l'ambassadeur.
Thank you, the ambassador of Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much, my colleague, moderator. I believe all of us have enjoyed this evening listening to actual farmers, practitioners, and academics. I was also one time very much involved in our country's agriculture. And one of the problems we face to really attract and get our youth to stay is one of land development. Sometimes we say we attract our youths to go into agriculture, but what drives them away from agriculture is the labor, the laborious work that is involved, especially in land development. And I believe until we start, as we have just heard from our lady, our young farmer in South Africa, that she was lucky. Her father bought a well-developed farm, and she had a very good start-off. But our main problem, more so in West Africa, is the lack of developed farms. Until we start where we should start, that is, by actually developing the farmlands and also irrigating them. Because for now we depend wholly and solely, 80% or even 90% of our agriculture is rain-fed. And until we tackle that those issues, I believe we'll have a hard time convincing our youths to come into agriculture and to actually get them to stay. So I was also wondering when Thomas Allen, in his presentation, he did say that as far as processing of food is concerned in West Africa, he is in difficulty to place it, to give it a place. I wonder what you really meant by that. So I need further clarification. What do you mean that the processing of food hasn't got a rightful place yet in Africa? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for your question, your remark also. Let me give the floor now to Uganda.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to thank CTA and the European Commission for organizing this event and inviting us to discuss these issues. Family farming in Uganda. I'm called Franklin Katungwe. I'm Minister Plenipotentiary at the Uganda Embassy in Brussels. Family farming in Uganda has got a number of problems. As everybody has said, farming is done by women, and not young ones, but old women who are phasing out soon. Then the youth. We have to look for ways and means, as His Excellency the Ambassador of Sierra Leone has said, what can attract the youth to farming. Digging in my country is done by hoes, H-O-E, hoes, hoe. So unless they are motorable small tractors to do the digging, I say small because the land is not flat. The terrain is not flat. So we have to use small tractors in the hills and what, so that some people can produce something reasonable. Maybe if they do that, if there is a way of getting those small motorable tractors, they can do something. And the problem they are finding again is the cost of finance. Financing is not easy. If you borrow, even though something doesn't go wrong really, at a commercial bank level, the interest rate is so high that you will not get enough money to pay the loan back. People talked of right to land. In Uganda, the land belongs to the people. So the wife and husband and children can use the land freely. But if they borrow, then the problem comes to pay back and the land will be taken away. Those are the problems most people fear. Their land to be confiscated and they are left with nothing. Lack of equipment and technology are the ones hindering the youth from going to farming. And even these meetings or events we hold here, really most people who talk are very knowledgeable. They talk nicely, presentations with substance, but the substance is landing to wrong forum. To me, I think also the events, such events, they should be attended by more youth who can talk to their fellow youth, understand each other very well. But when we sit here and talk, good speeches are made, good reports are made, but they don't go back to the youth at the right time to implement what we have discussed. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for your remarks, full remarks. Now I give the floor to Iselona Boto, CTA.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I had one question for Nono. which in some of the slides she showed for the 3 projects actually on farming, you have around the table, what I saw quickly on the slide, big groups. I mean, Saab, John Deere, McCain, etc. And having those hasn't at some point facilitated access to finance, one of the problems you were mentioning, because one would expect that this is a facilitating factor. Et après, j'ai en fait une question pour Denis.
And then I have a question for Denis Pesche from CIRAD. I'm very happy to see him here. It's been a number of years. So you showed us Ségou in Mali and in Senegal. I know you've been working for a very long time in West Africa yourself. Did you feel that there was an increase in agribusiness, the semi-industrial, local processing? Now you were showing, what you showed us, there were partnerships with big foreign groups. So what exactly is the local impact? And my last question for Mr. Ouedraogo from FEPAB. You referred to a number of products, flour, biscuits, made from black-eyed beans. So now, in the urban market that you're trying to increase, are you going to be focusing on these? This is where you're going to increase volume? Or have you identified other areas which would be new types of products for urban consumers, for local consumers? Thank you. I think we need to be closing the list of speakers. Now we've heard 5 people. There was a comment from Uganda, a contribution from Senegal, and 3 questions. The first one was from Mr. Ouedraogo from Nadine, and the 3 other questions were from Mrs. Boto, Mr. Ouedraogo, Mr. Pesche, and Ms. Dimakatso. So let's start with Mr. Ouedraogo, my cousin.
Oui, effectivement, Excellence.
Yes, quite so, Excellency. I think there were 2 questions for me. On the first question from Nadine, asking why do we work with microfinance? Well, there are some advantages. Of course, there are disadvantages. Well, the advantage is that the rates are very low. In Burkina Faso, it's about 9% compared to banks, minimum 15% from banks. So it's much more advantageous for us to work with microfinance. Now, the disadvantage is that if you want a lot more money, I think based on the BCAO rules, I think they don't allow microfinance to go above a certain amount. And the commercial banks refinance microfinancial institutions. I know you can go up to about 200,000 euros a year, 100 million CFA. But when we want to go up to about 200 million, we're told to go to the commercial banks, and they, of course, ask for guarantees we don't have and have very high rates. So we've asked the state to create an agricultural bank that can adapt itself to the needs of farmers. Now, from Ms. Boto, for the time being, the products are really products that are everyday products in Burkina Faso. This is why these processors have decided to focus on these. But of course, this will evolve. If there are other products such as sesame, fruits and vegetables, we will certainly focus on those ones if there's a demand. But what I mentioned when I made my presentation, those are the ones that consumers seem to want now. I hope I've answered the questions. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Pesche, and then the ambassador of Sierra Leone also asked a question. I'm sorry, I didn't remember that. Yes, there's a question on local agribusiness. To what extent do nationals invest in agribusiness locally? Well, we have very little data on this, and that's a big problem. We don't have any sort of statistical mechanism to get that information. I read a recent study in Zambia that there was there's a bit 100 hectares that were mainly bought up by civil servants. This was in Zambia. Maybe it's not the same everywhere, but there is a sort of land acquisition process in place, and also very little of this land was actually exploited, utilized, less than 10%. So if you like, it's just people investing, social insurance, if you like. It's not really a genuine investment in agribusiness. So I'm taking the opportunity here to suggest that donors or countries invest on getting information on this. It's all very well for civil servants to buy up land, but they should exploit the land, employ people. Is this a question of speculation? Perhaps the term is a little pejorative, but does this reflect some sort of economic development? And this is something we have very little information on, and it's obviously a sensitive issue. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Let me give the floor to Madame Nono Sekhoto.
Okay, Isolina, to get back to your question, you're right. Being able to access big names has assisted us to get access to finance. But just to give you a few examples, on Project 1, because it was the start, we literally took, as I said, it's been a long time. There were no big names. And also the industry of rabbits in our country has been, obviously, it's a new industry. So for the last 2 years, it was more about orientating potential investors, potential financiers to understand the industry. So the client we're working with had done a lot of that. And so this year, that's why I said this year, we've got Land Bank, who actually funds agricultural project. They're interested in funding us based on the work that's been done. Then Project 2, what's interesting about that is that I actually got approached by one of the stakeholders when they saw me advertising and speaking about the projects I'm doing with the rabbit in Facebook. So there are some big names, and they were able to assist us. And when I approached a bank like ABSA, they saw working with John Deere and everybody else. And so, yes, so that one started in 2016. And then this year, we plan on planting in August. So hopefully this will work out. And then Project 3, as I said, Standard Bank approached us. They're interested in funding young farmers, and they want to go on a program that will understand how to do it. So we're on an exploratory project with Standard Bank because they're actually interested. So it's really from all the work we've been doing that they're reaching out. So hopefully it'll work. We will hopefully get some. Thanks.
Oui, je crois que de manière.
So I think Mr. Thomas Allen would like to say something.
Trying to answer Your Excellency of Sierra Leone question as to my. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to clarify our result and views on the development of food processing. What I wanted to say is that if you look at the regional figures, food processing is developing, and we say that by looking at consumption data, controlling for imports. There is no doubt it is developing, and it's going to go on developing over the next years. But if we want to know if these development of the food processing segment within the value chain are contributing to rural development, then we need information as to where are those food processing unit based installed in place, in space, on a map. And this information we don't have yet, but we need to, that's part of the information we need to actually be able to build a case for food processing as a way to strengthen urban-rural linkages and rural development. Am I clarifying?
Merci bien. Donc,
Thank you. That was clear. And I think we've come to the end of the second segment.